Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. I'll continue on having read the first chapter in the life of the Buddha, where it's coming up to him leaving home and going through some of the marvelous and wonderful qualities of the Buddha. And he's talking about how the intoxication of youth, health, and life leaving him, and therefore he decides to renounce the household life. And just to flesh things out a bit, I found this article from Bhikkhu Bodhi from 2006 called The Buddha and His Dhamma, and it goes through a few other things from the Buddha's early life, and then also talks about some of the commentarial legends about his life. As a royal youth, Prince Siddhartha was raised in luxury. His father had built for him 3 palaces, one for each season of the year, and there he enjoyed himself in the company of his friends. At the age of 16, he married his cousin, a beautiful princess named Yasodhara. And now there's also this text, the Mahavamsa goes through the Buddha's lineage. There was an ancient king named King Okaka, and then this Yasodhara is, according to the Mahavamsa, then the Prince Siddhartha's wife was named Badakachana, although I suspect maybe Yasodhara was a nickname or another name for her. People had multiple names in those days, and that was Devadatta's sister, actually. During this time, he was probably trained in the martial arts and the skills of statecraft. As the years passed, however, when he reached his late 20s, the prince became increasingly introspective. What troubled him were the great burning issues we ordinary people take for granted. The questions concerning the purpose and meaning of our lives. Is the purpose of our existence the enjoyment of sensual pleasures, the achievement of wealth and status, the exercise of power? Or is there something beyond these, more real and fulfilling? These must have been the questions that rippled across his mind, for we find his own reflections recorded for us in a discourse called The Noble Quest, Majjhima Nikaya 26. Monks, before my enlightenment, being myself subject to birth, aging, sickness, and death, to sorrow and defilement, I sought what was subject to birth, aging, sickness, and death, to sorrow and defilement. Then I considered thus, why, being subject to birth, to defilement, should I seek what is subject to birth and defilement? Suppose that, being myself subject to birth, having understood the danger in what is subject to birth, I seek the unborn, the supreme security from bondage, nibbana. Suppose that, being myself subject to aging, sickness, and death, to sorrow and defilement, I seek the unaging, unailing, deathless, sorrowless, and undefiled state, the supreme security from bondage, nibbana. Thus, at the age of 29, in the prime of life, with his parents weeping, he cut off his hair and beard, put on the saffron robes of a mendicant, and entered upon the homeless life of renunciation. The developed Buddha biography adds that he left the palace on the very day that his wife gave birth to their only child, the boy Rahula. And now chapter 2 in Life of the Buddha. The account of the renunciation given in the Pitakas is striking in its bare simplicity. The elaborate details of the later versions are absent in it, as they are in this oldest version of the birth and early years. Here is the account, which is drawn from several discourses delivered to various persons. Before my enlightenment, while I was still only an unenlightened bodhisattva, I thought, house life is crowded and dusty. Life gone forth is wide open. It is not easy, living in a household, to lead a holy life as utterly perfect and pure as a polished shell. Suppose I shaved off my hair and beard, put on the yellow robe, and went forth from the house life into homelessness. Later, while still young, a black-haired boy blessed with youth, in the first phase of life, I shaved off my hair and beard, though my mother and father wished otherwise and grieved with tearful faces, and I put on the yellow robe and went forth from the house life into homelessness. And then this is verses that come from the Sutta Nipata. Now I will tell the going forth, how he, the mighty seer, went forth, how he was questioned and described the reason for his going forth. The crowded life lived in a house exhales an atmosphere of dust, but life gone forth is open wide. He saw this and he chose the going forth. By his so doing, he refused all evil action of the body, rejected all kinds of wrong speech, and rectified his livelihood besides. He went to Rajagaha town, the castle of the Magadhans. There he went for alms, with many a mark of excellence. King Bimbisara, from within his palace, saw him passing by, and when he saw the excellence of all the marks, "Look, sirs," he said, "how handsome is that man, how stately, how pure and perfect is his conduct, with downcast eyes and mindful, looking only a plow yoke's length before him. He is no lowly lineage. Send the royal messengers at once to follow up the path the bhikkhu takes." The messengers were sent at once and followed closely in his wake. Now which way will the bhikkhu go? Where has he chosen his abode? He wanders on from house to house, guarding sense doors with real restraint, fully aware and mindfully. He soon has filled his begging bowl. His alms round is now done. The sage is setting out and leaves the town, taking the road to Pandava. He must live on the hill of Pandava. Now when he came to his abode, the messengers went up to him, though one of them turned back again to give the king the answer to his question. The bhikkhu, sire, like a tiger, or like a bull, or like a lion, is seated in a mountain cave upon the eastern slope of Pandava. The warrior heard the runner's tale, then summoning a coach of state, he drove in haste out of the town, out to the hill of Pandava. He drove as far as he could go, then descended from the coach. The little distance that remained, he went on foot till he drew near the sage. The king sat down and he exchanged greetings and asked about his health. When this exchange of courtesy was done, the king then spoke to him these words: "You are quite young, a youth, a boy in the first phase of life. You have the good looks of a man of high-born warrior noble stock, one fit to grace a first-rate army, to lead the troop of elephants. I offer you a fortune, take it. Your birth I ask you also, tell it." And then the Bodhisattva responds, "There is a prosperous country, sire, and vigorous, right up against the foothills of the Himalaya, inhabited by Kosalans, whose race is named after the sun, whose lineage is Sakyan. But I have not gone forth to seek sense pleasures. I have gone forth out to strive, seeing danger in them, and seeing safe refuge from them in renouncing. That is my heart's desire." And now is related his initial seeking of teachers and guides for meditation practice. Now I went forth from the house life into homelessness to seek what is good, seeking the supreme state of sublime peace. Therefore I went to Alara Kalama, and I said to him, "Friend Kalama, I want to lead the holy life in this Dhamma and discipline." When this was said, Alara Kalama told me, "The Venerable One may stay here. This teaching is such that in no long time a wise man can enter upon and dwell in it, himself realizing through direct knowledge what his own teacher knows." I soon learned the teaching. I claimed that as far as mere lip reciting and rehearsal of his teaching went, I could speak with knowledge and assurance, and that I knew and saw, and there were others who did likewise. I thought, it is not through mere faith alone that Alara Kalama declares his teaching. It is because he has entered upon and dwelt in it, himself realizing it through direct knowledge. It is certain that he dwells in this teaching, knowing and seeing. Then I went to Alara Kalama, and I said to him, "Friend Kalama, how far do you declare to have entered upon this teaching, yourself realizing it through direct knowledge?" When this was said, he declared the base consisting of nothingness. It occurred to me, it is not only Alara Kalama that has faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and understanding, but I too have these faculties. Suppose I strove to realize the teaching that he declares to enter upon and dwell in, himself realizing it through direct knowledge. I soon succeeded. Then I went to Alara Kalama, and I said to him, "Friend Kalama, is it thus far that you declare to have entered upon and dwelt in this teaching, yourself realizing it through direct knowledge?" And he told me that it was. I too, friend, have thus far entered upon and dwelt in this teaching, myself realizing it through direct knowledge. We are fortunate, friend, we are indeed fortunate to have found such a venerable one for our fellow in the holy life. So the teaching that I declare to have entered upon, myself realizing it through direct knowledge, that you enter upon and dwell in, yourself realizing it through direct knowledge, and the teaching that you enter upon and dwell in, yourself realizing it through direct knowledge, that I declare to have entered upon, myself realizing it through direct knowledge. So you know the teaching that I know the teaching that you know. As I am, so are you. As you are, so am I. Come, friend, let us now lead this community together. Thus, Alara Kalama, my teacher, placed me, his pupil, on an equal footing with himself, according me the highest honor. I thought, this teaching does not lead to dispassion, to fading of lust, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana, but only to the base consisting of nothingness. I was not satisfied with that teaching. I left it to pursue my search. Still in search of what is good, seeking the supreme state of sublime peace, I went to Uddaka Ramaputta, and I said to him, "Friend, I want to lead the holy life in this Dhamma and discipline." His experience under the guidance of Uddaka Ramaputta is told in exactly the same words, except that he learnt from him the still higher attainment of the base consisting of neither perception nor non-perception, and that Uddaka Ramaputta offered him the sole leadership of that community, but the conclusion was the same. I thought, this teaching does not lead to dispassion, to fading of lust, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana, but only to the base consisting of neither perception nor non-perception. I was not satisfied with that teaching. I left it to pursue my search. Still in search of what is good, seeking the supreme state of sublime peace, I wandered by stages through the Magadhan country and at length arrived at Senanigama near Uruvela. There I saw an agreeable plot of ground, a delightful grove, a clear-flowing river with pleasant, smooth banks, and nearby a village as alms resort. I thought, this will serve for the struggle of a clansman who seeks the struggle. Now, before my enlightenment, while I was still only an unenlightened bodhisattva, I thought, remote jungle thicket abodes in the forest are hard to endure, seclusion is hard to achieve, isolation is hard to enjoy. One would think the jungles must rob a bhikkhu of his mind if he has no concentration. I thought, suppose some monk or Brahmin is unpurified in bodily, verbal, or mental conduct, or in his livelihood, is covetous and keenly sensitive to lust for sensual pleasures, or malevolent with thoughts of hate, or a prey to lethargy and drowsiness, or agitated and uncalm in mind, or doubting and uncertain, is given to self-praise and denigrating others, is subject to fright and horror, desires gain, honor, and renown, is idle and wanting in energy, forgetful and not fully aware, unconcentrated and confused in mind, devoid of understanding, driveling. When some such monk or Brahmin resorts to a remote jungle thicket abode in the forest, then owing to those faults he evokes unwholesome fear and dread. But I do not resort to a remote jungle thicket abode in the forest as one of those. I have none of those defects. I resort to a remote jungle thicket abode in the forest as one of the noble ones who are free from these defects. Seeing in myself this freedom from such defects, I found great solace in living in the forest. I thought, but there are the specially holy nights of the half moons of the 14th and 15th, and the quarter moon of the 8th. Suppose I spent those nights in such awe-inspiring abodes as orchard shrines, woodland shrines, and tree shrines, which make the hair stand up. Perhaps I should encounter that fear and dread. And later, on such specially holy nights as the half moons of the 14th and 15th, and the quarter moon of the 8th, I dwelt in such awe-inspiring abodes as orchard shrines, woodland shrines, and tree shrines, which make the hair stand up. And while I dwelt there, a deer would approach me, or a peacock would knock off a branch, or the wind would rustle the leaves. Then I thought, surely this is the fear and dread coming. I thought, why do I dwell in constant expectation of the fear and dread? Why not subdue that fear and dread while maintaining the posture I am in when it comes to me? And while I walked, the fear and dread came upon me, but I neither stood nor sat nor lay down till I had subdued that fear and dread. While I stood, the fear and dread came upon me, but I neither walked nor sat nor lay down till I had subdued that fear and dread. While I sat, the fear and dread came upon me, but I neither walked nor stood nor lay down till I had subdued that fear and dread. While I lay, the fear and dread came upon me, but I neither walked nor stood nor sat till I had subdued that fear and dread. That's from Majjhima Nikaya 4, the Fear and Dread Sutta. And that's also a practice that is the Thai tradition. The Thai forest masters would praise that practice of if there's a certain defilement that comes up, not changing the posture until it's subdued or calmed. And that's where it comes from. And Life of the Buddha doesn't go into some of the really nitty-gritty of the austerities. It has kind of a summary. So I thought since we've got a whole winter retreat, I'll just dive into the Buddha's description and all the gory details of some of his austerities that he undertook during his practice. This is from the Mahasihanada Sutta, the Greater Discourse on the Lion's Roar, Majjhima Nikaya 12, and this is starting in verse 44. It's on page 173. Sariputta, I recall having lived a holy life possessing 4 factors. I have practiced asceticism, the extreme of asceticism. I have practiced coarseness, the extreme of coarseness. I have practiced scrupulousness, the extreme of scrupulousness. I have practiced seclusion, the extreme of seclusion. And there's a note there. That this particular discourse, he was giving it to Sunakata, who was a great admirer of extreme asceticism, and the Buddha wanted to make it known that there was no one who could equal him in the practice of austerities. Such was my asceticism, Sariputta, that I went naked, rejecting conventions, licking my hands, not coming when asked, not stopping when asked. I did not accept food brought or food specially made or an invitation to a meal. I received nothing from a pot, from a bowl, across a threshold, across a stick, across a pestle, from two eating together, from a pregnant woman, from a woman nursing, from a woman lying down with a man, from where food was advertised to be distributed, from where a dog was waiting, from where flies were buzzing. I accepted no fish or meat. I drank no liquor, wine, or fermented brew. I kept to one house, to one morsel. I kept to 2 houses, to 2 morsels. I kept to 7 houses, to 7 morsels. I lived on 1 saucerful a day, 2 saucerfuls a day, 7 saucerfuls a day. I took food once a day, once every 2 days, once every 7 days, and so on, up to once every fortnight. I dwelt pursuing the practice of taking food at stated intervals. I was an eater of greens or millet or wild rice or hide parings or moss or rice bran or rice scum or sesamum flour or grass or cow dung. I lived on forest roots and fruits. I fed on fallen fruits. I clothed myself in hemp mixed cloth, in shrouds, in refuse rags, in tree bark, in antelope hide, in strips of antelope hide, in kusa grass fabric, in bark fabric, in wood shavings fabric, in head hair wool, in animal wool, in owl's wings. I was one who pulled out hair and beard, pursuing the practice of pulling out hair and beard. I was one who stood continuously, rejecting seats. I was one who squatted continuously, devoted to maintaining the squatting position. I was one who used a mattress of spikes. I made a mattress of spikes my bed. I dwelt pursuing the practice of bathing in water 3 times daily, including the evening. Thus, in such a variety of ways, I dwelt pursuing the practice of tormenting and mortifying the body. Such was my asceticism. Such was my coarseness, Sariputta, that just as the bole of a tinduka tree, accumulating over the years, cakes and flakes off, so too dust and dirt, accumulating over the years, caked off my body and flaked off. It never occurred to me, oh, let me rub this dust and dirt off with my hand, or let another rub this dust and dirt off with his hand. It never occurred to me thus. Such was my coarseness. Such was my scrupulousness, Sariputta, that I was always mindful in stepping forward and stepping backward. I was full of pity, even for the beings in a drop of water thus. Let me not hurt the tiny creatures in the crevices of the ground. Such was my scrupulousness. Such was my seclusion, Sariputta, that I would plunge into some forest and dwell there, and when I saw a cowherd or a shepherd, or someone gathering grass or sticks, or a woodsman, I would flee from grove to grove, from thicket to thicket, from hollow to hollow, from hillock to hillock. Why was that? So that they should not see me or I see them, just as a forest-bred deer, on seeing human beings, flees from grove to grove, from thicket to thicket, from hollow to hollow, from hillock to hillock. So too, when I saw a cowherd or shepherd, such was my seclusion. I would go on all fours to the cow pens when the cattle had gone out and the cowherd had left them, and I would feed on the dung of the young suckling calves. As long as my own excrement and urine lasted, I fed on my own excrement and urine. Such was my great distortion in feeding. I would plunge into some awe-inspiring grove and dwell there, a grove so awe-inspiring that normally it would make a man's hair stand up if he was not free from lust. When those cold, wintry nights came during the 8 days' interval of frost, I would dwell by night in the open and by day in the grove. In the last month of the hot season, I would dwell by day in the open and by night in the grove. And there came to me spontaneously this stanza never heard before. Chilled by night and scorched by day, alone in awe-inspiring groves, naked, no fire to sit beside, the sage yet pursues his quest. I would make my bed in eternal ground with the bones of the dead for a pillow, and cowherd boys came up and spat on me, urinated on me, threw dirt at me, and poked sticks into my ears. Yet I do not recall that I ever aroused an evil mind of hate against them. Such was my abiding in equanimity. Sariputta, there are certain recluses and Brahmins whose doctrine and view is this. Purification comes about through food. They say, let us live on cola fruits, and they eat cola fruits. They eat cola fruit powder, they drink cola fruit water, and they make many kinds of cola fruit concoctions. Now I recall having eaten a single cola fruit a day. Sariputta, you may think that the cola fruit was bigger at that time, yet you should not regard it so. The cola fruit was then at most the same size as now. Through feeding on a single cola fruit a day, my body reached a state of extreme emaciation. Because of eating so little, my limbs became like the jointed segments of vine stems or bamboo stems. Because of eating so little, my backside became like a camel's hoof. Because of eating so little, the projections on my spine stood forth like corded beads. Because of eating so little, my ribs jutted out as gaunt as the crazy rafters of an old roofless barn. Because of eating so little, the gleam of my eyes sank far down in their sockets, looking like the gleam of water that has sunk far down in a deep well. Because of eating so little, my scalp shriveled and withered as a green, bitter gourd shrivels and withers in the wind and sun. Because of eating so little, my belly skin adhered to my backbone. Thus, if I touched my belly skin, I encountered my backbone, and if I touched my backbone, I encountered my belly skin. Because of eating so little, if I tried to ease my body by rubbing my limbs with my hands, the hair, rotted at its roots, fell from my body as I rubbed. Yet Sariputta, by such conduct, by such practice, by such performance of austerities, I did not attain any superhuman states, any distinction in knowledge and vision worthy of the noble ones. Why is that? Because I did not attain the noble wisdom, which when attained is noble and emancipating, and leads the one who practices in accordance with it to the complete destruction of suffering. And this is back from reading from Life of the Buddha. I thought, suppose with my teeth clenched and my tongue pressed against the roof of my mouth, I beat down, constrain, and crush my mind with my mind. Then, as a strong man might seize a weaker by the head or shoulders and beat him down, constrain him, and crush him, so too, with my teeth clenched and my tongue pressed against the roof of my mouth, I beat down, constrained, and crushed my mind with my mind. Sweat ran from my armpits while I did so. Though tireless energy was aroused in me and unremitting mindfulness established, yet my body was overwrought and uncalm because I was exhausted by the painful effort. But such painful feelings as arose in me gained no power over my mind. I thought, suppose I practice the meditation that is without breathing. I stopped the in-breaths and out-breaths in my mouth and nose. When I did so, there was a loud sound of winds coming from my ear holes, as there is a loud sound when a smith's bellows are blown. I stopped the in-breaths and out-breaths in my mouth, my nose, and my ears. When I did so, violent winds racked my head, as if a strong man were splitting my head open with a sharp sword. And then there were violent pains in my head, as if a strong man were tightening a tough leather strap around my head as a headband. Then violent winds carved up my belly, as a clever butcher or his apprentice carves up an ox's belly with a sharp knife. And then there was a violent burning in my belly, as if two strong men had seized a weaker man by both arms and were roasting him over a pit of live coals. And each time, though tireless energy was aroused in me and unremitting mindfulness established, yet my body was overwrought and uncalm because I was exhausted by the painful effort. But such painful feeling as arose in me gained no power over my mind. Now when deities saw me, they said, the monk Gotama is dead. Other deities said, the monk Gotama is not dead, he is dying. Other deities said, the monk Gotama is neither dead nor dying, the monk Gotama is an arhat, a saint, for such is the way of saints. I thought, suppose I entirely cut off food. Then deities came to me and said, Good sir, do not entirely cut off food. If you do so, we shall inject divine food into your pores, and you will live on that. I thought, if I claim to be completely fasting, and these deities inject divine food into my pores, and I live on that, then I shall be lying. I dismissed them, saying, there is no need. I thought, suppose I take very little food, say, a handful each time. And then it goes through the emaciation that I went through already. When human beings saw me now, they said, the monk Gotama is a black man. Other human beings said, the monk Gotama is not a black man, he is a brown man. Other human beings said, the monk Gotama is neither a black man nor a brown man, he is fair-skinned. So much had the clear, bright color of my skin deteriorated through eating so little. And now verses. As I strove to subdue myself beside the broad Niranjara, absorbed unflinchingly to gain the true surcease of bondage here, Namuchi came and spoke to me with words all garbed in pity thus. And Namuchi is another name for the Mara character that appears in the suttas. You are thin and you are pale, and you are in death's presence too. 1,000 parts are pledged to death, but life still holds one part of you. Live, sir. Life is the better way. You can gain merit if you live. Come, live the holy life and pour libations on the holy fires, and thus a world of merit gain. What can you do by struggling now? The path of struggling, too, is rough and difficult and hard to bear. Now Mara, as he spoke these lines, drew near until he stood close by. The Blessed One replied to him, as he stood thus, Evil one, cousin of the negligent, you have come here for your own ends. Now merit I need not at all. Let Mara talk of merit then to those that stand in need of it. For I have faith and energy, and I have understanding too. So while I thus subdue myself, why do you speak to me of life? There is this wind that blows, can dry even the river's running streams. So while I thus subdue myself, why should it not dry up my blood? And as the blood dries up, then bile and phlegm run dry. The wasting flesh becomes becalms the mind. I shall have more of mindfulness, of understanding. I shall have greater concentration. For living thus, I come to know the limits to which feeling goes. My mind looks not to sense desires. You see a being's purity. Your first squadron is sense desires. Your second is called boredom. Then hunger and thirst compose the third, and craving is the fourth in rank. The fifth is sloth and torpor, while cowardice lines up as sixth. Uncertainty is seventh. The eighth is malice, paired with obstinacy. Gain, honor, and renown besides, and ill-won notoriety. Self-praise and denigrating others. These are your squadrons, Namuchi. These are the dark ones fighting squadrons. None but the brave will conquer them to gain bliss by victory. I fly the ribbon that denies retreat. Shame on life here, I say. Better I die in battle now than choose to live on in defeat. There are ascetics and Brahmins that have surrendered here, and they are seen no more. They do not know the path the pilgrim travels by. So seeing Mara's squadrons now arrayed all around with elephants, I sally forth to fight, that I may not be driven from my post. Your serried squadrons, which the world with all its gods cannot defeat, I shall now break with understanding, as with a stone a raw clay pot. I thought, whenever a monk or Brahmin has felt in the past, whenever a monk or Brahmin has felt in the past, or will feel in the future, or feels now, painful, racking, piercing feelings due to striving, it can equal this but not exceed it. But by this grueling penance I have attained no distinction higher than the human state, worthy of the Noble One's knowledge and vision. Might there be another way to enlightenment? I thought of a time when my Sakyan father was working, and I was sitting in the cool shade of a rose apple tree, quite secluded from sensual desires, secluded from unwholesome things. I had entered upon an abode in the first meditation, which is accompanied by thinking and exploring, with happiness and pleasure born of seclusion. I thought, might that be the way to enlightenment? Then, following up that memory, there came the recognition that this was the path to enlightenment. Then I thought, why am I afraid of such pleasure? It is pleasure that has nothing to do with sensual desires and unwholesome things. Then I thought, I am not afraid of such pleasure, for it has nothing to do with sensual desires and unwholesome things. I thought, it is not possible to attain that pleasure with a body so excessively emaciated. Suppose I ate some solid food, some boiled rice and bread. Now at that time, 5 bhikkhus were waiting on me, thinking, if the monk Gotama achieves something, he will tell us. As soon as I ate the solid food, the boiled rice and bread, the 5 bhikkhus were disgusted and left me thinking, the monk Gotama has become self-indulgent, and he has given up the struggle and reverted to luxury. Five dreams now appeared to the Bodhisattva. It was the night before his attainment of enlightenment, and the dreams were a premonition that he was about to attain his goal. Just before the perfect one, accomplished and fully enlightened, attained enlightenment, 5 momentous dreams appeared to him. What 5? While he was still only an unenlightened bodhisattva, the great earth was his couch. Himalaya, king of mountains, was his pillow. His left hand lay on the eastern ocean. His right hand lay in the western ocean. His feet lay in the southern ocean. This was the first dream that appeared to him, and it foretold his discovery of the supreme full enlightenment. While he was still only an unenlightened bodhisattva, a creeper grew up out of his navel and stood touching the clouds. This was the second dream that appeared to him, and it foretold his discovery of the Noble Eightfold Path. While he was still only an unenlightened bodhisattva, white grubs with black heads crawled from his feet to his knees and covered them. This was the third dream that appeared to him, and it foretold that many white-clothed laymen would go forth for refuge to the Perfect One during his life. While he was only an unenlightened bodhisattva, 4 birds of different colors came from the 4 quarters, and as they alighted at his feet, they all became white. This was the 4th dream that appeared to him, and it foretold that the 4 castes, the warrior nobles, the Brahmin priests, the workers, and the artisans would realize the supreme deliverance when the Dhamma and discipline had been proclaimed by the Perfect One. When he was still only an unenlightened bodhisattva, he walked upon a huge mountain of dirt without being fouled by the dirt. This was the 5th dream that appeared to him, and it foretold that although the Perfect One would obtain the requisites of robes, alms food, abodes, and medicine, yet he would use them without greed or delusion or clinging, perceiving their dangers and understanding their purpose. As to the 3rd dream of the grubs with black heads, it's laymen and lay women, or lay people here, all of the lay followers. And continuing on from Bhikkhu Bodhi's article, just one more paragraph. Now he was alone, and complete solitude allowed him to pursue his quest undisturbed. One day, when his physical strength had returned, he approached a lovely spot in Uruvela by the bank of the Narandjara River, and he prepared a seat of straw beneath an asvata tree, later called the Bodhi tree, and sat down cross-legged, making a firm resolution that he would never rise up from the seat until he had won his goal. Okay, I'll leave it there. And we've maybe got time for one question. If anybody has any comments or questions.
I have a question. I think there was one way you mentioned the practice of not changing posture when defilement arises. And it reminded me of a Vipassana retreat where they teach you not to even like move at all in general, especially with like pain, or not even to like focus on thoughts, just ignore them, just focus on the breath, just stay in one spot. And here in the Thai forest tradition, there's teachings on working with the breath or working with thoughts, and understanding them or abandoning them, and having a kind of active approach. I'm wondering if you can speak on distinction or.
For myself, I don't know if I would apply it to like pain, because there's a lot of monks who have sat through pain when they shouldn't, and now they sit on chairs for the rest of their monk's life. But I think the Buddha's talking about particularly that fear and dread, but then working with different defilements. So if any, you could think of a defilement, say it arises while you're doing walking meditation, then I think the idea is rather than getting away from it, then actually facing it head on and dealing with it right then and there, rather than deciding like, okay, well, I can't, too much lust or too much anger, I can't deal with this, I'm going to go, take a nap or something like that, get away from it somehow. I think that's perhaps the idea. And if Lumpo has any comments on that as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's there's some things that you